Hello, everybody, and welcome back. And my guest today, she's a best-selling author. Her book, Pursuing Your Destiny, was featured on NBC, and she is also a survivor of the 9/11 attacks on September 11th, 2001. You can follow her on Instagram, too. She does a ton of Zen and yoga inspiring videos as well on there. Miss Mikaila Cruz, how are you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing well. I'm glad that you agreed to be here. You and I connected obviously a week ago, and we talked about wanting to do this because I think you and I have similar ideas as far as I see with you talking about Zen and mental health's obviously a huge part of what I like to convey on my platform. So I was excited to have this conversation. How's your 2025 been thus far for you?
2025 has been a year of major changes in my career, in my family, in my addition to my household, which is a puppy. And that is a huge transition as well, as many of you know out there. When you have a new puppy, it changes a lot. So yeah, 2025 has been, there have been more changes in 2025 than I think in the last 3 years. So
Really?
yes, yes, and just a new beginning overall. I mean, every day is a new beginning, but when you see it from what is it now? We're on the fourth month of this year. There have been so many changes in 4 months that it's kind of like, wow, you have to look back and say, okay, this is what I've done, and I'm excited.
Yeah, I can't even believe that we're 4 months into this year already. It's kind of crazy when you think about it. Um, yeah, you talked about the changes. 2025 seems like it's been a lot of changes, like you just talked about. What was 2020 like in comparison to 2025 for you? Because I know for a lot of people that was also like a crazy transitional year with everything that went on.
I Well, I decided, instead of looking for a career, I decided to hone in on my skills as an entrepreneur. And I went to a recruiter and I asked to do contract work. So in the midst of the lockdown, right before the lockdown, it was like 6 months before, I got a really good contract with a nonprofit organization. I was really happy there. They were happy with me. It was a great collaboration. Unfortunately, on March 20th, 2020, my contract was canceled automatically. That day, they said, we can't have you on. So it changed my trajectory about what I need to do to make money. And so on that day, that was a major change, because I started looking at, again, what my skill set was. So I contacted a lot of my yoga clients that I would normally visit in person. And I said, okay, now we're in COVID. You still need a yoga practice if you're willing to keep doing this. So I started my online yoga teaching business. My revenue went up 300%. So in that whole time frame, I was able to make money, but also help people at the same time with that tragedy that was going on.
Yeah, I did notice that too. Because when COVID first struck, in theory, you would think like with, the fitness industry in particular at the forefront, like that with gyms and like yoga centers, those you would in theory feel like might get hit possibly the worst given like, the strict protocols at the time. But I actually found that a lot of them were able to pivot in a positive way, and it actually allowed people to kind of look within to find ways to improve your physical health without needing to go to a gym. Like people were using social media and Instagram lives and Instagram reels for like good purposes to help people get and remain in shape via like just virtually. People were finding ways to stay active and stuff through that, and it kind of, I feel like it might have actually fast tracked us in the long run in terms of like long term of where I feel like yoga and fitness might be headed in the future, where we're not overly reliant on like in-person training, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. I think there is also a benefit. There's always a benefit of visiting a yoga class or going to a meditation center and actually having an intimate setting with people who are like-minded and want to practice with you. At the same time, we all don't see time the same. So a lot of people will say, well, I don't have the time to go to a yoga studio, but I have time to do a meditation session while I'm sitting in my apartment. So
Right.
it's all perception, but I think it's a great balance to actually have, like you said, it did speed us up in terms of how we can share mindfulness, yoga, fitness, all of that just by having social media and video platforms.
Hmm. Now, when did you first take a liking to yoga? Have you been doing this for a while, or was this just recently?
But it's such a it's such a coincidence because when my dad came to this country, he had learned about yoga, and
Hmm.
he went to this yoga center in Manhattan, and he started studying with this one guru. And so I was 4 when he started practicing, and he introduced me to yoga when I was 4 years old. He taught me certain sequences. So by the time I was 4 years old, no, 5 years old, I was able to do a headstand.
Wow.
Fast forward to 20 years later, I was running 12 miles a day. I was training for marathons, and I was not practicing yoga. I didn't really believe in it. And I injured my knee. And the doctor said, you might want to start practicing yoga because you can't sit still for long. I can tell. Practice yoga. So I asked my dad, where is your guru? Is your guru still alive? And he said, yeah, he's still in Manhattan if you want to visit him. So his teacher from decades ago became my teacher. He's 85 now, and he still teaches in Manhattan. So my yoga journey started when I was 4.
Wow. So you were doing you said a headstand or a handstand when you were 4?
Headstand.
Headstands. Wow. Some people can't even parallel park the right way, and you're doing headstands at 4 years old. I think a lot of people's self-esteem's just kind of plummeted upon hearing that. But that's actually
Well, if you think about how brave children are, how brave they can be,
Mhm.
and when you have a parent who pushes you to do certain things, and I don't think it was meant to be a derogatory thing. I think he just wanted me to not be fearful of anything. And so when he said, "Okay, keep doing it," I kept falling and kept falling. He said, "Just think of it as walking. You don't remember trying to walk, but you remember
It
that you
just
were.
happened.
It just
Right.
happened." So once you start doing that, you'll get it. And telling a 4-year-old, I just was like, "Oh, this is playtime." And that's another thing too. When you're a kid, you think of it as playtime too. You're like, "Oh, I can do this," and just keep
Yeah.
practicing and practicing, and that's it. Yeah.
Yeah. There's like a saying. It's like when you're young, you almost don't know what you don't know, if that makes sense.
Yes, absolutely,
Hmm.
absolutely.
I want to talk about your upbringing though a little bit. You mentioned about your father moving here. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Manhattan.
You grew up in okay,
Yeah, so both my parents were immigrants and from different parts, and so I'm first generation here,
okay. And what nationalities are you?
a Filipino.
Filipino. Okay, nice.
Yeah, yeah.
So growing up here in Manhattan, did you from that point in time, like at any point in age, did you know what you had passions for initially? Like, was there any one thing in particular you could pinpoint as like, oh, that's like my first love, or that's my first passion of something that you took a liking to?
Art,
Really?
drawing, sketching, painting. That was my first love. And when I got into high school, my parents were worried because they said, you're going to be a starving artist. You're not going to be able to make as much money. And my dad was studying. He was studying finance at NYU. My mom was in insurance. So they had this idea that I was not going to be successful unless I was in finance or insurance. So at 13, my dad said that you're going to go into finance. You're going to go to college for finance, and you're going to work on Wall Street, and you're going to have a finance career. And that's exactly what I did.
So you went to college for finance, right?
No,
Okay.
business. And then he said, okay, now you're going to get a job on Wall Street. And I got a job on Wall Street.
Wow. So so You pretty okay. So your dad pretty much laid the blueprint for you in a sense of you know
Yeah,
what your
he
path was
did.
going.
He did. He was a stockbroker and then he became a bond broker. He's been in finance his whole life, and he said, "You have the brain for it. That's how you're going to make money." So I said, "Okay." So
And how old were you when you started working on Broad Street? Was this like straight out of college, or were you still in
yeah,
college?
straight out of college. Straight out of college, worked for J.P. Morgan, and then Bear Stearns, and then an institutional bank.
And that was prior to September 11th.
When I was working at the institutional bank, that was on 9/11.
That was on 9/11. Okay.
Yeah.
So could you maybe walk me through then that day in particular? I know you've talked about this at other points in times, but could you kind of walk me through um, maybe what that day looked like in terms of your perspective?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I was not supposed to be in the building that morning, that early actually.
Hmm.
I was working on a project for the equity and bond brokers from the night before, working on a presentation. And they said, "Can you at least finish it at home?" So I brought my laptop home, and they said, "Could you come in at 8:30 instead of 9:15, which is normally my schedule?" And I said, "Okay, I'll work on the project." I worked until I was at my mom's house that the night before, working on until 1 o'clock in the morning. The next morning, I looked out of my brother's bedroom window and I saw how nice it was that morning. On September 11th was one of the nicest days that I've seen all year, that year. And I was like, oh gosh, if I didn't have this presentation, I would have totally not gone to work. But of course, work ethic. So my dog was actually with me at my mom's house. So I left my dog. I said bye to my brother. My mom had already left for work and went to work at 8:30. Not a lot of people there in the building yet. And I went to the elevator, and in the elevator were maybe 6 or 7 IT guys in the elevator with me. And I remember wearing this body spray. It smelled like the beach. And they said, "Oh, did somebody go to the beach this morning?" And I said, "No, I said body spray, but believe me, I wish we were all playing hooky today." I got to the 95th floor. I worked on Tower 2. And I got to my desk, and a guy that I was dating, he called me and he asked me how my day was going. And I was annoyed because I'd broken up with him. And I said, "Look, I can't talk." I said, "I have to go." I hung up on him, and that's when I heard a screech. It's like a whistle, and it sounded like an airplane engine. And I didn't say anything, but then when the bomb or whatever it was hit, the windows in my office shattered. And if you look at the structure of the World Trade Center, the windows were floor to ceiling. So the office window shattered. Wind came in, and all of a sudden someone said, I think a plane just hit Tower 1. Everybody get out of the building. So I took my briefcase. So I was literally only in the office for like 2 minutes maybe.
Hmm.
Because it was at 8:43 when the first plane hit, I believe. And then my coworker, Lori, because she saw me run to the stairs, because we were 95 floors up and something happened. I would have never been able to get down. So she dragged me into the elevator. And I said, I can't go in the elevator with you. And she said, "No, you have to. You have to." And she grabbed me. She pulled me into the elevator. We got down to the 90th floor. The 90th floor was the legal department and the HR department. People were screaming. I saw people. I looked out of the elevator and I looked, and people were running back and forth on the phone, crying. And then one other person came into that elevator. So it was myself, Lori, this guy Andrew, and this guy Dave. We all descended to the 78th floor, which is the major elevator, the main elevator bank of Tower 2. Hundreds of people were waiting to get on those elevators, and those elevators held a lot of people, but we pushed our way in, and I heard a woman say, "No more, no more people, no more people." So all of us, I felt like all of us were the same person. We were all feeling the same way. We were all shaking, and I thought I was dead. already. I didn't think that I was alive. I thought when the plane hit, it was our building. Got down to the lobby. Lori headed for Liberty Street. I saw her run, and then I saw my manager, who I was supposed to meet with that morning. He was coming out. He was in the lobby, and he looked at me and he said, "Oh my God, you're okay." I called my manager, my direct manager, and I said, something hit the Tower 1, and she said, "Go home." I saw one of my coworkers running into the elevator because at the time Port Authority was saying that nothing was wrong with Tower 2.
Hmm.
So she went into the elevator and I pulled her out and I said, "No, go home." And she said, "No, but nothing's wrong with Tower 2." I said, "Go home." As I was walking out of the lobby, the second plane came into Tower 2. And when that happened, it was complete mayhem. People were running, screaming. A guy ran right into me and knocked me down into a steel barricade. I was almost knocked unconscious, and then my coworker Andrew was still with me and he picked me up. And then what, because some memories just are repressed for so long you don't remember. But 5 years after this happened, my coworker Andrew told me that when he was trying to get me out of the street, I looked up and I started staring at the people who were jumping from the building. So he tried to like knock me like conscious again because he was like, "We have to go." So he went to the South Street Seaport, and when we got there, it was hundreds of people, hundreds of people. We were there. I was trying to get phone service. Nobody can get phone service. People were online for the phone. But I remembered I had a Palm Pilot. And back then, those are the things that you were able to email and call and whatever. So I emailed my ex-boyfriend and I said, "Do me a favor, contact my mom, tell her I'm okay, call my dad, call my brother." And when I was doing that, we heard the rumble. Tower 2 was about to collapse. When it started to collapse, people thought, because it looked like it was coming at us, so people were running towards the East River, jumping, like almost about to jump into the water because they thought the tower was going to topple on us. Obviously, it didn't, but the cloud of dust that came, we were covered in debris. All of us looked like gray. We looked like zombies, pretty much walking. So as the dust particles came and came, we just, all of us, hundreds of us, started to walk uptown. And now this is by 10 o'clock. We got to Midtown, and I was able to take a cab. Andrew was able to take the ferry to New Jersey. He was living in Fort Lee at the time. And I got to my mom's house, and she didn't know that I was alive. My brother didn't know I was alive. So when they saw me, they couldn't believe. They were waiting to hear something from the hospital saying that I was gone. So.
Well, thank you first off for being so candid, obviously, and open with such a traumatic experience. Um, I did want to follow up. So when you had pretty much exited the lobby at that point, was it like within like minutes pretty much after that is when your tower was affected?
Yes. So when I got out of the building, I was my friend Pete, who had just moved to Chicago. He called me, so I still had cell phone service because for whatever reason, and I answered the phone and he said, "Are you okay? A plane just hit." And I said, "Yeah, I'm fine. And all of a sudden the phone shut off, and then I heard the roar of a plane and the boom. So it was literally minutes. So I took one of the last elevators down to the lobby before the second plane hit my building.
So do you feel like that decision to get in the elevator quite possibly saved your life?
Yes and no, because people who were on my floor were able to get down the stairs
Okay.
still. And the reason why they were able to get down is because they were below the impact. So the second plane came into, I believe, the 84th floor, 78th floor, or something. So they were already down by like 40th floor when the second plane hit. So they rushed. I know two people who were able to get down using the stairs.
Okay. Wow. So then, immediately following this, this is obviously a traumatic occurrence that nobody saw coming, and it's almost impossible to plan for, right? Like, we don't live our lives at this point thinking or bracing for a travesty such as this. So in your instance, then, in the immediate aftermath of this, what do those initial steps look like from maybe a coping perspective, but also then like career perspective? Because this was a place that you were working at the time, and then we know what occurred. What do those maybe initial steps look like from both mentally and then like career wise?
Well, the servers were located in Short Hills, New Jersey.
Mm-hmm.
And so everybody who survived or who weren't there that day, everybody went to Short Hills. I did not. My whole team did not go. So I felt like I lost my job. So career-wise, I was in limbo. I was still paid, but I just didn't have a job. I wasn't working. Mentally, we were all numb. My best friend got out of the building and she was on the 94th floor or 93rd floor, and she was numb. There were 8 of us in this group, and myself and my best friend were the only ones in the building that day. But all of us had the same feeling mentally, psychologically, where we're not able to cope with anything. Actually, we were, because the shock of it, we weren't able to deal with it yet.
And at the time, was there like resources in terms of maybe dealing with this traumatic event? Like, if this were to occur today, I'm assuming there would be, procedures already kind of put in place for people to kind of go and speak with those who could help them with what they're dealing with. Were there resources for you at the time? And if there were there any that you took?
I didn't take any. I didn't contact anybody for. There were resources, but not for 9/11. There was nothing in place. The 9/11 health program, the compensation fund, all of these funds were created obviously after the event. So at that moment, if you had a therapist, or if you had, medical insurance and you could get psychiatric evaluation help, that's who you would go to. So if you did not have that, you would just call and see how you can sign up for it. So that was really it.
And I almost feel like, in the position of a therapist, like just a normal therapist, it's your job to give your client like a feeling of assurance, but at the same time, how can you almost do that when this is such like a unforeseen event, a truly one in a million event that took place? As a therapist, it almost feels, how can I help this person? You know what I mean? They live this. I didn't experience this. It's almost like trying to talk to somebody who lived through it about something you just can't really relate to. So in that regard, it almost feels like for the people that did live through it, this is almost something that they're going to have to find from an introspective level to kind of get through. You know what I mean? Like, if I was a therapist in that position, I wouldn't even know how to help somebody, if that makes sense.
No, that's a great point. And the only thing, because I never sought therapy for this ever.
Ever? Never?
Never, never.
Mm.
I found that the experiences that I endured as a teenager growing up on the streets of New York actually helped me cope with this, because I knew that New York was a big city, but when something happened like this and I saw people hugging in the street, asking other people if they're okay, this is why I didn't need therapy at first, because I knew that I had a family unit that was supportive. I had friends who were supporting me. And also, if I were a therapist and I talked to someone in this position, in my speaking engagements, I normally say, if you have someone in your life who tragically died, whether they're in front of you or you just, somebody came to your place and said, the cops came and said, your son just died in a car accident. The sudden loss of that is very relative to someone who's lost their loved one in the World Trade Center, because you don't know what kind of, how they perceive that. So when I say everybody has, not everybody, but some have experienced their own 9/11 sudden loss, where they can't cope, and that's where a therapist can come in and say, okay, you've experienced this loss. That's the only way that I could actually see that happening.
So you feel like real life experiences and just almost in a sense, because I know there's this saying, it's like the only way to get through something is to just go right through it. You feel like your experience, like in that immediate aftermath of just, going through New York City like you normally would, seeing people embrace, just that feeling of camaraderie helped you more or less cope than speaking to a therapist would have, in a sense?
Yes, I do. When I was just looking at how people were supporting each other, and I can go home, I can go to my mom's house and she can say, okay, what are you going through? My brother was saying, okay, do you need to sleep here? Do you need anything? To me, that was my therapy. That's a form of therapy.
Hmm. Now, did that occurrence, obviously 9/11, you still live in New York City today. Is there any trepidation for you as far as, like, there's certain parts of the city, there's obviously a memorial now, they built the Freedom Tower over there. When it comes to, navigating that part of the city, how are you when it comes to that?
I don't normally go downtown. The only I had a friend who I would go and visit for breakfast, and his job was, I don't know, maybe 3 blocks away from the memorial. But I try not to think about it. I participate in the 9/11 Memorial Run every year, and
Hmm.
so it starts right by where everything happened, and it ends right at the memorial. So I have to prepare myself, but I don't normally go there on the anniversary. Every anniversary, I take off work and I actually do go downtown. I don't go to the memorial, but I take myself out for lunch and I spend the time. So downtown Manhattan is not a place that I normally would go.
Is that like the thought of it though? Is it maybe anxiety inducing, or is it to the point like if you were to somehow cross by it, would you have in any way like an anxiety attack from that, or is it just more so a mental
No,
thing, out of sight,
no,
out of mind,
no, it's actually sadness. It's
sadness?
sadness, yeah, because these are these weren't just coworkers. These people I actually went away with. We went out, we went skiing together. We would hang out every week together. These are people who, you spend a third of your day with for 2.5 years. These were your good friends. And so it's just literally just missing my friends. That's really
Hmm.
all it is. Now my office, it has a full view of the Freedom Tower, and I don't see the Freedom Tower as a representation of the World Trade Center. I see it just as a building.
Hmm.
So it hurts to see that, but at the same time, it's not the World Trade Center. It's a building to us.
Hmm. But prior to that, it was all happy memories, right? Prior to that day.
Yeah. Oh
Hmm.
yeah. A lot of happy memories and memories that can never be taken away.
Because that's pretty much like your young adult life essentially. I mean, you're straight out of
Very.
college at that point.
Yeah.
Everything's probably to you at that age felt like, you know you're in a big pond essentially. Like,
Yeah.
the world is your oyster.
It
um,
really was. It
yeah.
really was. I made good money. I had great friends, great job. It was everything. It was everything that I needed at that point. And I think a lot of it was not, like the going out and drinking and shopping. Those things were important. But then after that happened, I saw things differently. I became a minimalist. I didn't think of things as, I thought of, shopping excessively as trivial. I thought of drinking as just something to cope with my depression. I changed completely after 9/11.
Did you continue to do those things like shopping and drinking, or?
Yeah, I mean, I shopped when I needed to. If I saw something in the store and I liked it, and I think, do I want it or do I need it? If I need it, then what will it do to my income?
Yeah.
you know, or yeah, I mean, like if I have a cocktail with one of my friends outside, great, but it's not part of my life.
All right, this is the burning question though. When it comes to cocktails, like what's your kick at the moment?
Okay, so this all came about, I have no idea because I'm not. People used to tell me, like when my friends and I would go out, they were like, "You're just totally like Sex in the City because you're always looking for the latest bar, always the latest restaurant." And lately, it's been Cosmopolitan.
Oh, okay, all right, I can see it.
Yeah,
I'm a
and I
bit.
don't, and yeah, and I'll have one, and then that's it. I'll have dinner, I'll have fun time, and that's it. As opposed to wine, my friends and I will get a bottle, and we would share the bottle, and but it's been lately. It's just been one Cosmopolitan, and that's fine.
Are you more red or white wine person when you do wine?
I'm seasonal, so on a day
Seasonal.
like yeah, so on a day like this, it's not really really hot, so I might go for a rosé.
Okay, that's not a bad choice.
And then when it's really hot, I'll have like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Grigio. But in the fall and winter, Malbec, Montepulciano, Rioja, those deep reds.
I'm a bit of a Chardonnay guy myself, my own right.
Okay.
But I will say my ultimate kick at the moment. This might come as a bit of a surprise because I think this is like, a white girl drink. I'm a bit of an espresso martini connoisseur at the moment.
That is so funny that you said that. I had one 3 weeks ago. I am hooked. The only reason the only reason why I won't have it at night is because I stay up all night.
It's the caffeine.
If I had it, today when I go out and I'll have it like at 3 o'clock. I don't think I'll do that, but if I do at 3 o'clock, I'll be able to have it and be fine to sleep tonight. But espresso martinis are so strong.
They really are.
I love them. They're so good. They are so good.
My first ever one, I had it was a pumpkin spice one during October, like during Halloween season. They were doing specials on it. That's the first time I ever had one. So
Ah,
I did it like reverse backwards. And normally people would like they would like the espresso martini first, and then they would dabble into like the seasonal stuff. I went seasonal straight into the originals.
well, you have to start somewhere.
Exactly. If it's a little unorthodox way to get there, but.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh.
So I do want to ask about the book now. Did you gain inspiration for the book because of what happened to you, or were you always had ambitions on being an author?
I knew I was a writer in high school. I knew at some point that I'd be writing a book. I just didn't know what it would be of. And so my one night, my ex-husband and I, it was late at night, and he said, I think we should write a book. Your story needs to be written. And I said, okay. And so 3 years it took for us to come out with the book. And the first chapter explains my experience on 9/11, but then it reverts back to what happened in my childhood that helped me cope with that tragedy.
And then that was featured on NBC, I believe I saw, right?
Yes, NBC. Let's see. I was on ABC Live
Hey,
with the book. Yeah, it's been featured on numerous networks. BBC also, uh, Washington Times.
that's got to feel really rewarding, like I would say.
I think that I'm glad that I didn't write the whole book about 9/11 because that's just one day of my life.
Hmm.
There are a lot more things that happen, and I think in the book there are certain things that people can relate to. If they couldn't relate to 9/11, they would be able to relate if you had any abuse in your childhood. You can relate, and you can relate to that book.
So when it comes to like, let's use that for an example, those are, you know, accomplishments in my eyes. When it comes to those types of, maybe we'll call them milestones, in life, whether it be, maybe a job, maybe it be a passion, anything that you accomplish, are you the type of person that, is kind of focused on the next thing, or are you able to kind of compartmentalize what you've just done and kind of live in that present? How are you with
No, I have to remind myself.
that? Okay.
Like I have a friend who continuously reminds me, if you're feeling a certain way, if you don't feel accomplished, take a look and pick a year, whether it be 3 years or 5 years, and see where you are. Go back in your phone. Go back in your phone to your photos and actually see where you were at that time, and you see what you've accomplished in those 5 years. Then you'll know. If you're just feeling like you haven't accomplished anything, and that's really what keeps me going, because sometimes I will, well, most of the time I'll say, okay, what's the next best thing that I can do? What is my next best step, without seeing what I've already accomplished? Because then now I'm almost finished with my next book, and so that I'm looking at all of the writing that I've done in the last 2 years, and so it's going to propel me and push me to really get this done.
Yeah, I feel like you almost need anybody with any type of ambition or thing that they're pursuing. You almost need something to kind of continue to drive you. Otherwise, you become jaded, I feel.
Exactly. Jaded. You could feel not worthy enough, confused, feeling like you're wasting your life.
I have a bad tendency, actually, of just like kind of always looking ahead instead of celebrating the small accomplishments. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
to my detriment. But um, I did want to ask you, because your book, you just briefly before touched upon childhood abuse. So, I mean, you don't have to obviously get into detail, but you also experienced some things that were maybe traumatic in your young adolescence.
Yeah, between sexual abuse, physical abuse, these things are so common with children in general. And so when you have that kind of childhood, and you have an upbringing where you're not you're not supposed to talk about it, what happens is you take that experience and you do one of two things. You either use it to your advantage, and in times where a tragedy like 9/11 happens, you put up a wall and you stay strong and you deal with it when you have to deal with it. Or you stay in that bad place, for lack of a better term, and it just becomes severe depression. So
Mhm.
it's a choice. It's a choice. But as a child, we just don't realize what it's going to do to us as adults if we don't get help.
So, do you feel like maybe what you dealt with prior to 9/11 almost maybe gave you like this coat of armor in a sense,
That's
potentially?
exactly what I meant. That's exactly what I meant in the beginning of this. That everything that I endured helped me cope with 9/11. So no matter what people think, when you're in a job and you're in an office, you feel protected.
Hmm.
There's security guards downstairs. Nobody at that time, there was nobody that was able to go into my building, through the turnstile without a card, without security trying to make sure that you don't get up those stairs. You feel protected. It was a sense of being violated. So our lives were violated, and that has a lot to do with my childhood experience being violated. So there's a correlation between the two, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. I mean, you obviously don't want to go through that at all, but I feel like when you go through these things, there are experiences in your life that only you know and live through and you could relate to. And for better or for worse, they build you thicker skin for when things maybe later occur in your life that are unforeseen, such as, 9/11. I'm sorry, obviously, that you experienced so much, but the fact that you're able to come out on the other side from what you dealt with as a child to then 9/11, and we're able to now parlay this into something that you're very passionate about, and also doing and spreading great messages through your Instagram, such as yoga and your books. I mean, it's commendable. So congratulations on all your success.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mhm. So when you're not writing books or doing yoga, what is like what's maybe something about you that if a person was curious, like what are some things, maybe I don't want to call them guilty pleasures, but what's some things you do to pass time when you're not like working or doing yoga? Like what are some fun things that you're passionate about?
Well, my family and my friends could attest that they think I'm completely insane. The reason why is because I'm I'm an adventurist. So, I do scramble rock climbing, no gear.
Really?
In June I'll be climbing the Rockies. Last year I did 10,000. My goal is the top 14,421. No gear. Um, that's yeah. So I'm researching that, and that's my guilty pleasure.
So you're telling me that you go rock climbing on actual mountains
Yeah,
without like without no harness, nothing?
right. And I had to promise my best friend that I wouldn't do that anymore. So he said, if you're going to climb the Rockies, get a walking stick. If you don't have gear, go on the hiking trail and go on the what is it called? The long peak. The long peak is the climbing and hiking. He said you don't need gear for that. Just you can't don't rock climb like without gear anymore. No
I've
like don't climb without ropes.
I've got secondhand anxiety just because I watched this movie about a year and a half ago called Fall, right?
Yeah,
And like, yeah,
I
do
saw
you
it.
know you saw it? Yeah, and the movie pretty much starts out. I mean, the premise of the movie is essentially like rock climbing, and then it obviously delves further into just they end up on a light tower, but um, yeah, no, that's I can't imagine that is pretty insane.
Well, I grew up with a horrible fear of heights. I mean horrible. Like if I were to climb upstairs like a 13 steps and look down, I would have an anxiety attack. So in terms of that, and when I look at documentaries on how these guys would, you know, like walk along cliffs without gear, that doesn't phase me. It's really when they get to the top and they're looking down, which I don't normally do. If I get somewhere, I'm there. I don't look down. I know that I'm there, and that's it.
Yeah, it's kind of so for me. Like if I see, because I mean there's a couple like tourist attractions in the city. Like there's this place called the Edge in the city that I've been to before. It's like kind of like that see-through thing. When I'm up there for an extended period of time, just like walking around, like I feel like my heartbeat going a little bit. But then like for instance, I actually am a huge roller coaster or at least I was. Not so much these days, but at one point I was like a big roller coaster person. So like those, we had this ride here in New Jersey. They just took it down recently. It was, I believe, the tallest roller coaster in North America, and I would go on it like it was nothing. But when it comes to like extended things of like having to like know that you're there and looking down at this, that freaks me out. But like if it's quick and it's almost like ripping a band-aid off, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I started out with roller coasters. So like when I went to Great Adventure, I would continuously ask my dad, "Can we go on it again? Can we go on the Great American Scream Machine?" That was my favorite. I started out with Rolling Thunder. I was like 8 years old, and I was just crazy about doing that. That adrenaline. I think I am an adrenaline junkie, but I also think it's a way to prove to myself that if I could survive something like that, that I need to live every day of my life.
Yeah. Would you ever go skydiving?
Well, my brother did last 2 years ago,
Okay.
and I asked him, "What did you do? 12, 14, or 18?" He said, "I did the 18." I was like, "Oh, okay, so I'll do the 18 then."
Have you
So
done it yet?
no, I will though.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, maybe like because he did it in Santa Barbara, California,
Mhm.
and that sounds amazing. So I might just do that.
Yeah, it's got to be a bucket list.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's
One of those things.
I never thought that climbing the Rockies would be on my bucket list, but it became one. So
Yeah. Well, I want to be generous of your time today, obviously, and I've had a fun time getting to meet you and chat with you. Thank you so much for being generous with your story and just so
Or,
open about everything.
of
I
course.
wish you the best of luck with all your, future projects that you have going on. If you'd like to, plug anything, feel free. The floor is yours.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, well, thank you so much, Mike. It's been such an opportunity, a great opportunity to speak with you today. This has been a great meeting, and yeah, if you want to find me, just check me out on Instagram. It's Mikaila Mikaila_NYC. TikTok is the same, and on TikTok I share a lot of vlogs, a lot of views on mindfulness. I also do 15-minute meditations, free meditations, donation based on YouTube, and that's where you can find me as well.
all right. Thank you so much. Have a great holiday weekend.
You too, Mike. Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye.